resistance is futile. Your life, as it has been, is over. From this time forward, you will service us.
No! We will not service Washington.
Mr. Worf, fire.
Well, welcome to another episode of Renegade and the Ramblers Radio. And this is Dan Bailey, and we have Jeff, and then we have Suzanne decided to pop in today. So how you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing pretty well, Daniel. And we have a new tagline that we're going to introduce tonight in all our ads, on all our breaks. So people have to start listening for that. And I'm going to kind of explain it when we get to get started the show after we welcome the only good-looking one, the pretty one in this group, Suzanne Sherman.
Hello.
Because the rest of us certainly don't, that doesn't apply to the rest of us. So anyway, Suzanne, welcome to the show. Glad to have you. We have, I think, a pretty exciting show on store tonight. We discussed quite a few things, and I think we came up with a good lineup of subjects.
I think so as well. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
So, Daniel, where do you want to start tonight? Are we going to start with the ramble and or with the rant and ramble, or are we just going to go right into stories? What's up tonight?
Well, I got a rant written out. I don't know if you did yours or not, but
well, I have. I'm just going to go over what our new tagline is going to be. That's it. I'm going to explain it a little bit.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and hit mine up real here. You all probably like this one. I titled it, "The South Will Rise Again." Well, for the last couple of months, I have been doing these weekly rants as part of my radio show, which I hope you all have been listening to and enjoying. This week, I'm going to cover a topic I have always been very passionate about, the Southern War for Independence and Self-Governance. Some will ask, how do these two things have anything to do with each other? After all, the Civil War was fought solely so the South could continue to own slaves. This could not be farther from the truth. While there was an abolitionist movement going on in the North, there was no active legislation in Congress that would have banned the slave trade. Only laws Congress had enacted in regard to the slave trade was that there was no importation of slaves from Africa, and that northern states had to return runaway slaves to their masters in the South, which the bulk of the northern states decided they were not going to do, which was a violation of their constitutional process. But in contrast, though, the North demanded that unjust tariffs imposed on cotton be fully enforced on southern ports, while turning a blind eye toward the same tariffs at northern ports, which is a clear violation of the Constitution. When the South would complain of such actions, Congress and the executive would simply ignore them. The South left due to their concern not being addressed by the government that was supposed to be their agent. They left because they couldn't get no satisfaction that their needs would ever be addressed. They desired self-governance, nothing more, nothing less. They desired the original American dream. Now we have local government officials so desiring to keep rioters happy that they will ignore history. Maybe they believe the whole St. Lincoln mythology of he only started the war to save the slaves. Maybe it is because they never did any actual research on the subject. Either way, there is no excuse for one not to know their history or to give in to a bunch of law-breaking rioters. Now the latest actions being taken against history is the removal of statues in the New Orleans, Louisiana area. They claim this is being done because sorry, I'm dealing with a sinus stuff. They claim this is being done because the historical markers celebrate a fictional sanitized Confederacy, ignoring the death, ignoring the enslavement, ignoring the terror that is it actually stood for. And after the Civil War, these monuments were part of that terrorism as much as burning a cross in someone's yard, according to Mayor Landrieu. So we can see that Mayor Landrieu has not studied his history. If he had, he would have known that there was no terror in the South until President St. Lincoln arrived on the scene. After all, it was St. Lincoln's generals that shelled the city of Vicksburg that had no troops in the city at the time and then burned Atlanta to the ground while they were occupying the city. In fact, in Atlanta, the North was occupying the city when they set it aflame. Now, were there people enslaved in the South? Yes. But I'm going to let you in on something. There were also slaves in New York and New Jersey at the time, too. Do we ever demonize New York and New Jersey for owning slaves? No. How about the fact that the largest slave port was in New York City? The biggest slave market, I believe, was in Manhattan. But you don't hear any mention of that, do you? The fact that we only ever demonize the South for owning slaves is just egregious, if not a falsification of history. I would also like to know what examples of Southern terrorism Mayor Landrieu is alluding to. As to my knowledge, I can not recall a single one. I do not agree with slavery, but to demonize one party in our history for it, when clearly both had a part in it, is just wrong. If we ever want to grow past our mistakes, we must have a truthful look at it. Normally, it is never as simple as what we have been taught in school. We must learn to look beyond what we're taught in school and to research our history for ourselves. We must learn to discern and make judgments based on facts and logics, not on emotion and feelings. I urge everyone that may listen to this will do their homework and research the subject out before drawing any conclusions. And you can find that at my blog at renegadebaileys.com.
Now, Suzanne, I know that you wanted to discuss these monuments coming down because it really is just a cleansing of history, trying to make it just a one-sided history.
Well, yeah, in 2016, actually, I had an article published in the American Conservative on this very topic. Also tied into that was the obfuscation of the truth of our colonial and revolutionary history. And in that article, we focused on the colonial and revolutionary times, but also in a longer article, I believe it's even on the Veritas Radio Network page on my show page, The Suzanne Option, I discussed the lies that were still being propagated today at, for instance, Harper's Ferry by the National Park Service, which essentially, and also Fort Sumter, I've seen the same speeches where they blame the entire war against Southern independence on the issue of slavery. And when you do that, what you're effectively doing is taking a stance where you can't have a rational, intelligent, and intellectually honest discussion on this subject because you're by implication implying that you support slavery. That's the argument they take against you, when the truth of the matter is the war was not fought to end slavery. Lincoln's own words said that he wanted to maintain the Union, and he would do so without freeing any of the slaves, if that's what it takes. And to anybody that thinks that the war was actually fought over slavery, I ask them to please reconcile that with the original 13th Amendment called the Corwin Amendment, in which was going to be an amendment to the United States Constitution. It was not ratified, but Lincoln did support it. And the Corwin Amendment essentially said that the United States, the federal government, would never, ever interfere with the institution of slavery, period. So if they had already made that promise not to interfere, why would the southern states leave over this issue? They could have avoided a lot of death, a lot of carnage, because, again, that promise had been made.
Well, that's the whole issue really was revenue. And, you know, it's really funny because just while we were doing our prep, we were talking about revenue today and the way that they extracted from us. And while there are some quotes of St. Lincoln where he was talking about the fact that the taxes in the South, they needed these taxes, and that's really what it came to. When they left, a major stream of income to the general government, which at that with St. Lincoln became a national government because he forced independent states to be part of a formerly voluntary union. It's no longer voluntary after Lincoln. I mean, you have no choice.
And he was quoted as saying, I can't let the southern states go. They're the ones that are paying for the government.
Right.
And the revenue collected from them also was vastly disproportionate, and it was all being invested in the northern states with this was the first egregious example of crony capitalism we had, most notably the railroads, who were all Republican friends of St. Lincoln.
Yep. Well, and I said that they were now forced into a union and they couldn't leave. Well, that's not true. And you and I know that. That is the perception, though, today. If you ask people, the vast majority of brainwashed Americans will tell you that it's settled. Lincoln settled it. It's over. You can't leave. There's no more secession.
Yeah, and then they get fancy and cite Texas versus White, where the Texas Supreme Court, I believe it was, said or the United States Supreme Court said no, secession is illegal. Now remember, when the Constitution was ratified, 3 states said we want to reserve the right to leave, to secede if this voluntary compact of sovereign states no longer suits us. That condition, that reservation, was accepted under the equal footing doctrine. What does that mean? Well, that means that term, that reservation, applied to all of the states, all of the 13 it applied to, since we have had no constitutional amendment, because this was in the Constitution. It wasn't in the writing, but again, in the ratification documents, and that's what we need to look at. We have had no subsequent constitutional amendment making secession illegal. So what they're saying is, well, a Supreme Court decision or a war is now sufficient to take the place of a constitutional amendment. That's simply not the case.
Right. A lot of people don't. Oh, go ahead, Daniel. Susie, go ahead.
I was going to say, even without the equal footing doctrine, equal footing doctrine, the very fact that the colony seceded from Great Britain is all the justification you would actually need. Like Mark says, it's a political movement. It's not a legal or illegal movement.
Right. And the other thing
that's just show that they had the legal right to do so. And to anybody that thinks that they didn't, I would ask them this: why was Jefferson Davis never hanged for what he did? There was no trial. They had him in custody for, I think, 2 years, and then just released him. Whereas I think it was Mary Surratt, the first woman that was executed by the federal government with an attenuated at best connection to the assassination of Lincoln, was hanged with the other convicted co-conspirators. But Jefferson Davis was not. Now, why was that? Because then it would come out that what they did was clearly not illegal.
Right. And that's that great book that Mike Church has in his store, Was Davis a Traitor? And that's a great book, folks. It's not a fast and easy read, but it is the defense that was going to be used for Davis, which never had to be used because they never went through with the trial. But he laid out, and it was never refuted, his arguments that proved that secession was legal. And since it was legal then, it still continues to be legal today. And what I was going to say earlier is it took the states to accede, that means to agree to join the union. That means they could agree to leave the union or secede. It's voluntary. And if you say it's not voluntary, then it flies in the face of everything that was in the ratification debates.
I've been yapping, giving someone else a chance.
I know. That's why I stopped. But am I not at least on the right track by saying that if they can accede, that means they can secede? because that's what it is.
When you
It's
talk
separate.
about the ratification debates also, that is why it's so important to look at the records of the ratification conventions, because that is the source of interpreting what the Constitution means, not the words of politically connected lawyers and their government-issued black dresses. It is the ratification documents, the records of the ratification conventions.
Okay. I'm gonna interrupt Daniel. I'm gonna get in my little 2-second thing about. I got 3 minutes to talk about our new tagline, and then we can come right back to this discussion, and that gives a reason for everyone to come back from the break to listen to more discussion about secession. Our new tagline, folks, is going to be 18th century ideas for 21st century thinkers. So why did we do that? Because is when we were given the Declaration of Independence. Now, the ideas presented there are way older than the Declaration of Independence because there were natural rights that Jefferson talked about. So the people had those even before the Declaration. So when Jefferson talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, we already had those. So Jefferson didn't grant us anything in there. It's something we already had. But the 18th century is the period that gave us that document that we today look to as our Declaration of Independence, which it was. What was that declaration? A secession statement. We left the British Empire. So that's the 18th century ideas that we're pushing here. We're talking about natural rights, the right to life. We're going to have a story later. We're going to talk about the abortion clinics. If you don't have life, if we're killing babies, are we denying them their natural right? Heck yeah. So we're going to talk in the future a lot about the 18th century ideas. And why 21st century thinkers? Well, because today our schools and our government and society is creating a bunch of answer givers. They're not thinkers, they're answer givers. So at school, they're giving the answers to the tests. So, hey, what happened in 1865? The Civil War ended and secession was destroyed forever. That's the answer they're going to give. They're just answer givers. They can't think. They're not going to go read and find out for themselves. So today we need to have thinkers. So we're going to challenge people to think. So we're going to have 18th century ideas for 21st century thinkers. And here's the break, and you're going to hear the new tagline.
I took off for a weekend last month just to try and recall the whole year.
Yeah, I think Judith's point of view is very valid, Reg. Provided the movement never forgets that it is the inalienable right of every man or woman to rid himself or herself, agreed? Thank you, brother, or sister. Where was I? I think you finished. Oh, right. Furthermore, it is the birthright of every man or woman. Why don't you shut up about women, Stan? You're putting us off. Women have a perfect right to play a part in our movement, Reg. Why are you always on about women, Stan? I want to be one. What? I want to be a woman. From now on, I want you all to call me Loretta. What? It's my right as a man.
Oh, why do you want to be Loretta, Stan?
I want to have babies. You want to have babies? It's every man's right to have babies if he wants them. But you can't have babies. Don't you oppress me. I'm not oppressing you, Stan. I've got a womb. Where's the fetus going to just take? You're going to keep it in a box?
Here, I've got an idea. Suppose you agree that he can't actually have babies, not having a womb, which is nobody's fault, not even the Romans, but that he can have the right to have babies.
Good idea, Judith. We shall fight the oppressors for your right to have babies, brother. Sister, sorry. What's the point? What's the point of fighting for his right to have babies when he can't have babies? It is symbolic of our struggle against oppression. Symbolic of his struggle against reality.
The left's struggle against reality becomes more and more apparent every day. Don't be a relativist. Listen to Renegade Ramblers Radio. 18th century ideas for 21st century thinkers. You won't disappear when you wear Tail Gunner Apparel custom camo clothing and all natural bath and body products for women and men too. And don't forget to ask about their line of custom home products and bed scarves. Look awesome and feel even better. Tail Gunner Apparel on Facebook at Tail Gunner Apparel and at tailgunnerapparel.etsy.com. That's tailgunnerapparel.etsy.com.
Ain't nothing doesn't go with camouflage. You can't blend in the country. You can't stand out in the fashion world. A little too tall, could have used a few pounds. Tight pants points, hollering out.
Well, welcome back. This is Renegade and the Rambler show on the Renegade Ramblers Network. 18th century thinking for 21st century.
You're close. 18th century ideas for 21st century thinkers.
I'm just a little.
It's brand new. I mean, come on. This is it, man. It was just as. I mean, tonight was the first time.
Well, the only reason I remember that this is the Renegade and Rambler show is because I got it written on the headline right here underneath the video. So, anyway, what I was going to get into is that, and I'm sure Suzanne would know more about this than I do, but the Supreme Court after the Civil War or the War of Northern Aggression, wasn't there several court cases where they came out and said, well, yeah, the Fed was in violation of the Constitution, but for this case, they weren't, or the South was a separate country, but then in this case, they weren't, and that sort of stuff.
I don't know. It's so convoluted. I think when was Texas v. White? Was that in 1971?
I think so. This was all like right after like the 1860s or 1870s.
Yeah, from the decade that gave us the 14th Amendment. You know, I mean, how do you go? I mean, here's the thing: the states' vote from the CSA were their votes counted for the 13th Amendment. Somehow they were members of the Union for the 13th Amendment's ratification, but now when it came time to ratify the 14th Amendment, they would not be admitted back into the Union unless they agreed to ratify the 14th Amendment. Interestingly enough, Lincoln
which they can't do. They can't do because
Lincoln,
they're not members of the Union. They can't vote on it.
Then Lincoln said they never left. So, I mean, again, going back to Daniel's point, everything was so convoluted. Did they leave? Did they not leave? Well, it depends on what we're trying to do.
Well, they
did leave. I mean, it's obvious.
I'm talking about the spin that they gave on it. Yeah.
So it's all convoluted. I got you.
There was the one court case I keep thinking about is there's international law that says you cannot blockade your own country. Yet the North blockaded the South. And it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court was, I'm paraphrasing, of course, said, well, in this case, they were not part of the Union. But for, like Suzanne said, for the 14th Amendment, you know, you will ratify or else you're not in the Union. It was all back and forth.
It depends on what
made no sense.
Done and who was making the decisions.
Right.
But we knew that they left, and they had every right to leave.
And they should leave again.
I'll go to the first state that leaves.
I'm with you there. The first one that leaves, I'm moving.
Unless it's California.
Unless it's California.
Well, in that case, we'll send them gifts.
Now, okay. Now, I will qualify that statement. If they become the state of Jefferson. You know where I'm talking about, up in the northern part there, which is really not anything like the southern part. Maybe.
Well, not even northern and southern. It's more coastal and inland.
That's true.
And a long time ago, I mean, 20, 30 years ago, even the northern and southern parts of California were talking about separating, but that was over the issue of water, not political ideologies.
Yeah. So, is there anything else you wanted to add? Anything else you wanted to add on that on this Lincoln narrative? I know that you had a trip. You went to Virginia, and this was more of a Revolutionary War trip, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember your story right.
Actually, both. It was probably 50-50, quite honestly.
Okay.
But it is the intellectually dishonest approach to once again have this government use slaves as their excuse. There were slaves in the northern states. We had the slaves in the border states, and Lincoln had no problem, profiting from the sweat off of their back. And the same the same big government ideology is still hiding behind these people. And shame on them for doing that, and at the expense of having an intellectually, like I said, honest, candid discussion on this. And why would they do that? Because maybe that would, like again with the Revolutionary era, people would get back to our basics and realize how off track we are. In fact, we're completely inverse of what we were intended to be. And the more people that are aware of that, the more tenuous the stranglehold this government has on the Union.
Yeah. Hey, I got a question for you guys. When was the last time America had the USA had slaves? When was it abolished?
Well, no. The 13th Amendment, but we're all slaves now.
Well, I'm talking about, physical slaves in the South. So they were emancipated in after
1863.
1863. So I'm sure today we have a bunch of slaves that lived through that era and are alive today, right?
Well, that's why they should go to college for free. Absolutely. Yes. I forgot about that. In fact, Sheila Jackson stands before us as a freed slave.
So
yeah, you're right.
Here's the story. This goes perfect. Okay, so here we go. University faculty backs demands for free tuition for black students. This is from the Daily Caller. It's David Creighton. First, the student government at Western Kentucky University demanded that black students be given free tuition to make up for historical wrongs like slavery and segregation. Now the faculty government at the academic institution are implicitly supporting that demand by insisting the university create a fund to pay educational expenses for black students and other underrepresented groups, the College Fix reports. The student government resolution insisted that reparations for historical racism be provided. So now we're going to pay reparations to people that weren't slaves because 100+ years ago there were slaves. These people weren't slaves ever.
I want reparations. My ancestors were Cherokee. I demand reparations.
My dad's a Jew. I want a free Audi from Germany.
Well, you don't want a BMW.
No.
No, I want Audi.
Just stay away from Volvo.
I'll tell you what. I want a Lamborghini because they were part of the Axis. Hey, Beck. So anyway, we got this story here from Western Kentucky University. They want to get free education. Okay, so I thought there was under our vaunted Constitution there was equal rights. How can it be equal if a group based on color gets something free at everyone else's expense, and because my color is different, I'm denied that? Isn't there a little bit of a legal issue there?
Well, I'll tell you what we were taught in law school in my constitutional law class. I had my teacher was a sitting Superior Court judge. And when somebody did raise that exact issue to him, and he leaned toward the liberal side, I realize now, the way he justified it was, well, we are making up for past transgressions. So these insane policies are still, in his mind, okay because we're making up for, again, slavery, which falls right into that liberal mindset. There's also another one where you talk about like the qualifications for, say, any professional capacity, and whites are coming out on top. Well, then they have to skew those values to, again, make up, because we have a disparate impact. It impacts minorities more than whites. So they're bending over backwards where there really isn't an issue. I mean, when you add these, when you add these policies together, it becomes racism and they come full circle. So there's really nothing sensical about it. But here we are talking about universities and affirmative action mindset. There is no common sense to it.
So let me so we're going to combat racism by being racist. Being racist.
Yes.
So
yes.
It's okay to be racist one direction to fix racism. Oh man, I'm getting a headache. I'm getting lost here, folks. This is ridiculous. I mean, help me here, please.
I can't. I got nothing.
I know. I mean, it's just like the other day, the whole space travel taxing in California. And oh my gosh. And they actually are taxing the planes that fly over California already.
Are they
They're taxing here? Baltimore or Maryland is going to tax, if you tax water you collect because you're collecting rainwater. Good Lord.
Well,
is there any sanity left?
Well, getting back to that issue of the free tuition. Hi, Luca. Getting back to that issue of the free tuition. It just goes to show that this whole liberal progressive mindset is run off of emotion. It is run off of pure ad hominem rhetoric. There's no logic involved. You just have to feel. You don't have to think. Well, I feel they have been wronged, even though if I think about it, there are no living slaves today other than Sheila Jackson Lee, obviously. So we're just, damned be the facts.
I had to find this story here if I can find it. There was a story that was talking about the left. And really, there is one other explanation for all this, and it's control. They're trying to control everyone. And if they can enslave us through whatever means they can, they will. And that's what really, when this comes down to, it's just more control over us.
It's like this. You know how you have the mountain and the valleys in the economy, and communism levels the playing field by chopping off the mountain? Well, that's how we ended slavery. We chopped all the free people off, and now we're all good little tax slaves.
Yep. What was it? Representative Dingell, I believe he was from Michigan during the healthcare debates for Obamacare, and he said, well, without government mandated healthcare and government controlled healthcare, we can't effectively control the people. And everybody said, whoa, wait a minute. And his minion said, oh, no, he misspoke. And anytime a politician misspeaks, you know that they have spoken the truth. He swerved into the truth, slammed into it broadside, and then had to cover his tracks. And that just revealed to me their intent is to control the people. And what better way to do it? By healthcare. All of your records now are mandated to be electronically filed. The government has access to everything. There can come a point in time when, if they're going to act upon all of us in one way or another, they've got our medical records. When you know somebody's medical history, what are they going to use? They're doing this in California right now with gun control. They're going door to door and confiscating guns when people are getting psychiatric treatment. And you can say, well, that's a good thing, but there was a guy in California whose wife had gone on medication, and they went and took his guns just on the outset that, well, she shouldn't have access to them, without even examining first, how are these stored, and is she even a risk to getting these guns? Well, we don't care because we're feeling, we're not thinking.
Yeah, it's even worse than that because I have this discussion with people at work, and I work in law enforcement, folks. So it's even, here we go. I told these guys at work, listen, you go to that doctor and say, I can't sleep, and you're prescribed sleeping pills. You are now a mental patient. They can come and confiscate your firearms. That's simple. Go to the doctor and say you can't sleep. You're now on the list. It's that insidious. So, and those medical records, they're wide open to the government. They have to be open to them because they have to approve the payments, basically.
Where is this going to end up right now? And I think of this, maybe I'm going on a little tangent here, but every time I go to the store, you see all the signs. Have you had your flu shot yet? Have you had your flu shot? Whatever shot, and I'm thinking right now it's voluntary. It's not with kids now. We're seeing in certain states are losing their waivers. But when is it going to be that if we all don't line up like sheep and get our flu shots, which I haven't had for 20 years now, that's going to be mandatory, and they're going to know whether or not we did it, because guess what? Our records have to reflect that we had it.
That's right. And that's the problem. They know if you are complying with all their edicts through that. On top of that, you got your credit cards, and you look at your new cards, they have that RFID chip. They can track that radio. That's radio signals it's putting out. They can track you. They know might as well just have a GPS attached to your body, because they can track that RFID chip. They can track your transactions. They know what you're buying, when you're buying it. They can track where you are through your sales too, purchases as well.
Okay, well, before the break here, you're talking about RFID chips? That right there is enough that they can track everything I do.
Oh, yeah.
It's got a chip inside of it, and both Canada and the U.S. have access to that chip. The funniest thing about this, on a little tangent here, is that Canada was more worried about me using this, which blocks the signal, than the U.S. border agent was about telling me there even was a way to block the signal.
Yeah, you can block the signals. So anyway, it's 8:39. We might as well take this break real quick. This is Renegade Ramblers Radio Network, 18th century thinking for 21st century. Oh, I did it, Daniel. You got me. 18th century ideas for 21st century thinkers.
We'll have to rehearse that.
Well, I'm going down to the river. I've got a cane pole in my hand.
What you doing, Brown?
Reading history, Pinky.
Oh, I love doing that, but I always forget to buff the chrome.
That would be waxing the car, Pinky. That's different.
Oh.
Reading history doesn't make things shiny. It edifies you and prepares you to confront the possibilities of destiny.
Did you know that every time your mouth moves, strange sounds come out?
I'll explain this so that even you can understand.
Here at Renegade Ramblers Radio, we like to explain things so even the ruling elite can understand it. 18th century ideas for 21st century thinkers. This is the Renegade Ramblers Radio Network, featuring the Renegade and Rambler Show on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, The Glorious Cause on Saturday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, and the Barrett Briefing on podcast. 18th century ideas for 21st century thinkers.
Children, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
There are many sanctions we could take. Financial institutions, for one. Believe it or not, the Russians have a very weak economy. We could do a lot more damage there. Individuals could be sanctioned. Organizations could be sanctioned. There's a wide range of options that we still have to respond to a Russian attack. When you attack a country, it's an act of war. That would have to constitute an attack on the United States of America.
Let me ask you this question. Is Vladimir Putin a war criminal?
I would not use that term.
Well, let me describe the situation in Aleppo, and perhaps that will help you reach that conclusion.
All right. And
It's much harder to go. I'm waiting in line. Nobody gets too much love anymore. It's as high as a mountain and harder to climb. Ooh, you nigga, not alone with a loving star.
okay, well, now that I'm not talking over the bumper music that I forgot was going to play after that, anytime that you get McCain and Rubio together and you end it with nerve, it's just an excellent soundbite.
All right. I'm gonna just jump in here because I want to see if I can get this on my camera because I just got this and we haven't even looked at this headline. Let's see if I can get this headline up here. Can you see the headline?
I took my glasses off.
Okay, I can see it in my camera, so I know it's there, but I'll read it to you. Why yes, U.S. troops may fight alongside Al-Qaeda in Yemen. Oh my God. Good thing I played. That was a great bumper or break there because we had McCain. So we're going to be fighting with the people we're supposedly against in Yemen. Oh gosh. So anyway, where are we going from here now?
Well, we were.
Take it back a step further. Not only are we fighting against them, we created Al-Qaeda so we could run the poppy fields over in Afghanistan. So, you know, imagine for everybody that decried Ron Paul, had he been elected, we wouldn't even have ISIS right now, but we need a boogeyman.
Right. And last night, I think during my show, I played, matter of fact, I know I did. Remember, one of my breaks I had the Ron Paul clip about the golden rule, and they booed him. They booed Ron Paul because he wanted to have a golden rule of foreign policy.
We must bomb other people into submission, Jeff. I told you this last night. We must bomb. If we don't, Raytheon will lose money. People will be out of work. We got to make America great again. Come on, Jeff. You need to get on board already.
Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed Martin are the winners. And honestly, the Gold Star families, they're the losers. And why are they the losers? Because their kids were killed so that Raytheon could make a buck. I'm sorry if that offends someone, but it's the truth, so get over it.
Well, who was it that was in front of a congressional committee that had said that we needed to take some action? I forgot what the exact context was, but this was recent. And he said the military, about the budget, I think. The military industrial complex, the defense contractors need certainty. So we need to stay in a state of war because it's become our biggest business enterprise. I saw somebody today say that American foreign policy is the #1 priority of our government. That's, you know, it would be one thing if we stuck to it as a source or a matter of self-defense, because that was one of the purposes of the Compact of the Union was national defense. So from countries looking in, we were one nation, but from within, it essentially was a free trade zone of 13 sovereign nations. Yeah. So,
and let me just interject here because I don't have the headline, and I know it wasn't in the pile of prep, but there, Trump is announcing a $350 billion with a B, $billion military arms sale to Saudi Arabia. Oh, that's a 10-year deal worth $350 billion. We are exporting death and destruction on a massive scale.
To an absolutely ass-backwards, evil, corrupt system of government. We are supposed to be all about tolerance. You cannot even be a citizen of Saudi Arabia unless you are a Muslim. These are the Wahhabis. They are the source of all things that are wrong in the Middle East. And when they say jump, we say how high.
Yep. Do we want to move on to that one soundbite, or we just want to keep going on with the with this discussion on this foreign policy? Because I'm good either way. Whatever you guys want to do, we'll go with that.
Before you go to the next subject, Jeff, I got to play this soundbite because Suzanne said congressional committee, and this is all I can think of when I hear congressional committees.
This is a island that at its widest level is, 12 miles from shore to shore, and at its smallest level or smallest location, it's 7 miles between one shore and the other. Is that correct?
I don't have the exact dimensions, but to your point, sir, I think Guam is a small island.
Very small island, and about 24 miles, if I recall, long. So 24 miles long, about 7 miles wide at the least widest place on the island, and about 12 miles wide on the widest part of the island. And I don't know how many square miles that is. Do you happen to know?
I don't have that figure with me, sir. I can certainly supply it to you if you'd like.
Yeah, my fear is that the whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
Yes, that is right. The wonderful Congressman Hank Johnson from, let's see what.
No relation.
From the 4th Congressional District of
Georgia?
Yeah, Georgia. The Atlanta area, I believe, believes that an island can tip over. I think he's got an island and a aircraft carrier confused, but kudos to the Rear Admiral for keeping a straight face during the entire testimony and not just busting out laughing like I would have done.
How did he do that? And this, by the way, is one of the geniuses responsible for imposing the American Health Care Act upon us. Mm-hmm. Guess which way he voted?
Well, he's a Democrat, so he obviously voted with Obama, because if there's one thing you can say about Democrats is they toe the party line. If they're told to vote yes on something, they vote yes on it. And they're told to vote no, they vote no.
Well, same with the GOP, only they toe the Democrat line.
Well, yeah, but the GOP will completely run a guy as their president, which is technically the head of the party if he gets elected, and then completely turn their back on him and act like he doesn't exist.
That's why I said they'll run the Democrat party line.
Yeah. So, okay, did you want to move on to the glass break article now, Jeff, or?
That's up to you. I'm good with either way. Suzanne, if you want to move on to that, we can move on, or we can keep going on this this foreign policy. But that's completely up to you.
Whatever you guys want.
All right, Daniel. Whatever you do is what we're doing. You're the producer.
Oh, the broken glass, the windshield. Let's run with that.
Yeah, I think so. We're running out of time, so I'm going to head to that.
Officers give a lot of breaks. warning for speeding, a heads up rather than a ticket for a broken headlight, but no break, no warning, no mercy for a guy in Denver who was right in the middle of fixing his broken windshield. Investigative reporter Jeremy Hohola continues our ongoing Citation Nation series. Oh, crap!
Some stranger had picked up a rock and just threw it in my windshield.
This isn't about the vandal who smashed Nick Berlin's Subaru.
The idea, more than the amount of money.
It's about what happened the very next day when he made plans to fix it.
We were actually just standing here in our door, and we were ready for his appointment.
3:30 was the set time for his windshield replacement at an auto glass shop. As he was driving, getting close,
the officer who was behind me.
Lights flashed. An Adams County Sheriff's deputy on patrol for lawbreakers and criminals.
And all of a sudden we see a cop out there with writing a guy a ticket.
Yep, right in the auto glass shop parking lot. The officer wouldn't give Berlin a break over the break. The ticket written at 3:39, just minutes after his appointment was set, in the parking lot.
He's pretty astounded just to think that that was what happened.
It's never happened before.
Not when they're 100 feet away.
The ticket is marked unsafe vehicle.
He had plenty of visibility on the driver's side of the windshield.
Maybe Nick Berlin got really loud and mouthy with the cop.
And I said, really? Like in that voice, and he's like, yeah.
The officer didn't want to hear it and gave the ticket with a November court date, time, and money.
It was $46, I believe.
Come on. There's gotta be more to this ticket story. There's gotta be. If there is, the Adams County Sheriff's Department does not want to talk about it. A spokesperson would only say that officer has his own discretion.
I don't know if he just is a no-nonsense kind of cop.
The local American Civil Liberties Union says this type of ticketing doesn't work.
The more and more police officers see their role as ticketing as opposed to protecting and preserving public safety, that has a tendency to erode the public trust.
The shop replaced the windshield in an hour.
I've offered to pay Nick's ticket if they don't drop it for him.
Clearing the view after a broken moment.
It was definitely a bummer to, I don't know, I got a ticket for something that I was as close as I could be to, resolving.
Jeremy Hohola, 9 News.
So there you are, folks. A ticket for a broken windshield written in the parking lot of the windshield repair place, feet from the entrance. If you saw the video, you know that we're talking about literally probably 20 feet from the entrance to the garage where he's going to have it fixed.
So I think what happened here was the officer saw him on the road and he pulled him over, or the individual was stopped already because this was private property at this point, but he followed him on there because he observed him driving on the road. I'm not justifying this stop. I think it is an absolute fallacy, and this is exactly what is, as I said in the article or in the report, discrediting the reputation of police officers. And furthermore, if you see the picture shown on there, the crack is on the passenger side. His view was not obscured in any way, and he obviously knew that this was about to be fixed. So we know this was about an officer that just wanted to show his authority here. And you hear people say, well, the law's the law. If you have a problem with it, don't break the law. How do you not break the law here? Do you get your car towed? I mean, do you really need to get your car towed when you can safely get it to the repair shop? I find absolutely no justification for what the officer did.
Well, the justification is they wrote a law, and that law allowed them to separate us from our wealth. And they are a taxing agency. The police have become a taxing agency. I'm sorry, again, truth be known, I'm in law enforcement, and the law enforcement community has become a taxing agency. Every time you drive down the road, you're breaking the law some way or another. You're going to roll a stop. You're going to go a little over the speed limit. It's just, you're breaking the law every time you're on the roadway. And you're biding your time till you're going to be the next revenue source.
I'll share a story with you I had on my show a few weeks ago with an attorney, Nicholas Somberg, out of the state of Michigan. And he took this case. He's representing the individual pro bono. He had his vehicle, it was 8 degrees in It was parked in his driveway, private property, and it was running so they could warm it up for his girlfriend and their toddler to go in, so they wouldn't have to go into a freezing cold car. When he came out to get them in the vehicle, there was a ticket for, I think, $128 on the windshield because it was unsafe to leave the car there because it could be stolen. So this is clearly a safety issue, which raises the question, why, if the officer was so concerned about public safety, did he leave the vehicle in this dangerous situation? All he had to do was knock on the door and say, hey, we have a situation that might be dangerous to the public. I think you need to go out there and supervise the vehicle. And no, he didn't. He just left the ticket on there, which really proves to me that the true motive was revenue generation and not public safety.
Well, but everything in this realm is couched in public safety. We had another story. I know we're not gonna have time to get to, was the construction workers, aka police officers, doing the sting operation on people texting, sitting at a stoplight, texting.
Yeah, and they said, well, the law is the law. We don't care if you're stopped. Anytime you're operating a vehicle, it leaves absolutely no discussion for common sense whatsoever. Again, it brings people who are law-abiding citizens crossing the line into the criminal realm, but it's small enough where you don't get your day before a court. You don't get to have a trial. You know, jury nullification is the answer to tyranny at the local level. But these little onesie-twosies, smaller vehicle infractions here, you don't get that opportunity. Not only that, you have to pay a deposit. You have to pay a fee before you even get your court date. Then you have to go and fight it. And oftentimes, they're not going to take your word for it, so it's not even worth it. And they just know it's such a big hassle. People are going to pay the fines.
Right.
And
I've even pulled over. I've even pulled over to the side of the road to either take a call or to do a text, because yes, it isn't safe to text while you're driving. So I've pulled over, put my foot on the brake, did my text, and then left again. Under this article or this news story, I broke the law, and they're going to write me a ticket because I was still in control of that car, even though I pulled off the road to safely do what I needed to do and then pulled back on. That doesn't matter. I broke the law. Give me the $150 fine and cough up the money to the crown, dingbat.
It's even, they can be even worse than that. If you're at a bar and you're drunk, you can't get anywhere. You can't get anybody to pick you up. So you go out to your car, you start your car because it's cold outside, and you sit in the driver's seat and you take a nap, and a state trooper rolls up on you, he can write you a DUI ticket because, quote, you're in control of the vehicle, even though the vehicle never left the parking spot, and it's on private property.
Yeah, that's true.
And according to the PA Supreme Court, they don't need a warrant to search your vehicle because, quote, it's on public roadways and it's a view of the public. So it's not considered there's no expectation of privacy according to the state Supreme Court.
Last word there, Suzanne, because we're out of time.
Okay, no, in Utah, they went from 0.08 to 0.05, and it's obvious that there is no big safety issue between those 0.03% of blood alcohol content. If you can pull somebody over and get them on a DUI, you're going to bring in a lot more money in fines and revenue than you are for just a failure to signal or a broken tail light, which are the reasons I see overall why DUI cases I've represented people in have been pulled over in the first place. Had nothing to do with how they were driving.
Yep. All right. Hey, Daniel. Good. It was good talking to you tonight, and thank you, Suzanne. It was a great show. It was nice to see you again. We'll have you on again sometime soon.
I always enjoy it. Thanks, guys.
Yep, you're welcome. This is Renegade and the Rambler show on the Renegade Ramblers Network. If you like the video, please like, share, whatever you want to do to it. Just don't butcher me up too bad. And we also have a Facebook page at Renegade Ramblers Network. So we look forward to hearing you, and we'll see you again next week. Until then, stay safe and have a good week.